Philippians 2 and 13. For it is God which worketh in you, both to will and to do of his good pleasure. That's Philippians 2 and 13. So the Bible tells us, for it is God which worketh in you. This is a really amazing verse. God, your Father, works in you. Now, this is important to get this, is because God is showing us it's not just something that we do or we conjure up or stir up ourselves, but it's God who works in you. Now, what does God work in you for, or for what purpose? In this verse, Philippians 2 and 13, for it is God which worketh in you, number one, to will, W-I-L-L. God created you with a will. So you can choose to do something or to not to do something. You can choose to do God's will, or you can choose not to do God's will. So God is showing us that if it's just left up to us, many of us in many of the circumstances concerning God's will choose to not do God's will. But God is so good, he works in you that you will be willing to do his will. Did you get what I said? God's not going to make you do his will, but he does work within you so that within your will, you choose to do his will. Number two, God works in you to do of his good pleasure. So, number one, he works in us the will to be willing to do his good pleasure. Secondly, to do his good pleasure. And these two go together. Let me try to explain this. You can be willing to do the will of God and not actually do it. You can do the will of God and not actually be willing to do it. You did it because you just didn't want to face the consequences of not doing it. But God working in you, he works in you to this end, that your life, your action will be pleasing to him, and it will be to your benefit. It's God that works in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure. Now, this verse is so important that we embrace it with all of our heart. God, I receive your work in me to will and to do of your good pleasure. So, Philippians 2 and 13, for it is God which worketh in you, both to will and to do of his good pleasure. Philippians 2 and 13.